You've been assigned a presentation. How can you do this to engage your crowd and make sure that no one is sitting in the crowd, falling asleep, bored out of their mind, right? We've all been in those presentations where we're thinking, oh my goodness, how long is this presentation going to be? When will it be over? We've all felt like that, right? So, what can we do to make our presentations a little bit better and have our crowd excited to hear what we have to say? This TED Talk is amazing, and this is what this presentation is built around. I watched this TED Talk and just really found it to be super helpful. So I wanted to pass it on to you as well. I'm not going to play it in the video. What you need to do is just scroll down. You can get this presentation and watch the first 5 minutes there. And then the rest of the TED Talk, I kind of break it down within this presentation. So just look in the comments and you can grab this presentation, watch the first 5 minutes of this video, and then come back to this presentation. So let's break it down. Let's say that I am presenting about trench warfare. I'm a history teacher. That's what I taught. And so I would be presenting about this to my AP class. So that's why I use this as an example. If I were to put this slide on the board, there are several ideas going on here. What I want you to do is take some notes as I read through it. So just follow along, write what you can get down. Trench warfare in World War I involves several things. So, for example, we have trench warfare that occurs in World War I, and that is when the men would fight in the trenches. The reason they had to do this is because of protection. The technology had progressed so much that it was really, really deadly. For example, you had machine guns, airplanes, poisonous gas. Poisonous gas was so bad sometimes that if you wouldn't get your gas mask on fast enough, you could actually cough up a lung. So it was just awful conditions in World War One. The life in the trenches was also really bad. It often flooded, and you could get trench foot, which basically meant that your foot would rot off of your leg. There were rats and frogs in the trenches. It was just really dirty and gross. While in the trenches, it was also really boring. Men would write letters home to their families from the trenches, and sometimes, they would hear the airplanes flying overhead, and it was loud and just really, really bad environment. The problem was that no one ever gained any ground in war, and the war continued for a really, really long time. All right, you've got that written. We're going on to the next slide. So that's the first example that I want you to remember. Let's talk about trench warfare. So, what I want you to do is just take a minute and look at this picture. What are some of the things that you see? Great. Now let's write down some of the things that you just talked about. So, we see the conditions in the trenches are not good. It's very muddy. The trenches can flood. We also talked about trench foot, where sometimes the men would be in water for so long that their foot would rot off of their leg. So write that down. And the other thing that we talked about was that you can have rats and frogs in the trench. It was really dirty. There was a lot of disease and sicknesses going on in the trench. So tell me what you remember about the slide with all the words. Tell me what you remember about the slide with the big picture. Which of these two slides do you think was more effective? This one's the one with all the words. There's with the big picture. If you said the one with the big picture is most effective, you would be correct. Mostly because when I went over this one, I'm talking at you, I'm reading the slide, and I'm saying it really quickly, and you're writing it while I'm talking. So are you really paying attention to what I'm saying? Not really, because you're trying to write as I'm talking. Whereas this one, we had a short discussion about it, and we still were able to write it down. This one, I was more of the presenter and the facilitator of the presentation versus just reading off of the slide to you. So, how can you avoid death by PowerPoint? Here are 5 tips. Let's get started with number 1. One message per slide. This is super important because if there's too much going on in the slide, then those who are listening don't know where to focus. For example, with this slide, it's way too much. I'm talking to you about the new technology, the life in the trenches, how bored they would get, and there's just too much going on. What do you focus on? Whereas if we just focus on the life in the trench and what it was like, that gives you a clear place to really think about. And then also with giving a big picture, it gives you a visual to connect to what you are writing about. So, number 1, one message per slide. Number 2 is the redundancy effect. This means that if you have sentences on the screen and you're speaking at the same time, the audience will not remember most of it, if anything at all. Here's an example. While I talk about this, I want you to write. So, write what you see on the screen as I'm talking. Supercar exterior. Exterior advantages of the classic car. The exterior of the classic car combines the dynamic road-hugging focus of a coupe, delivering comfort in flat-free tires, speed by its aerodynamics, handling by its new lightweight material, and visual perfection with xenon lights and a beautiful air intake and reduced fuel. All right, stop writing. So, what I want you to do now is I'm going to put up another slide, and while I'm talking, I want you to take notes. Okay? Here we go. So, we have the supercar exterior. First off, we have the flat free tires. These tires are amazing. You will feel the ride so smooth. So, make sure and write down flat free tires. Xenon lights. These are the top of the line lights. You'll be able to see miles and miles ahead. Air intake. Amazing on this car. And it's also aerodynamic. So that means you will use less fuel to get the car going and to keep it going. So, how much will you retain? How much have you retained between these two slides? For example, with this one, how much do you remember versus this one? How much do you remember? Also, how many of you see a slide like this one right here and totally shut down? Like you're not even listening, or you write as quickly as possible and then you stop listening once the slide goes away. I would have to raise my hand on that one because if I saw a slide like this, I would definitely be shutting down as soon as I was finished writing. Whereas this one holds my attention a little bit more because of the very big visual, and the words on the side are just, they're smaller and they're just snippets of what I need to write down. So it's not so aggressive. So an image with shorter bits of text is the best way to go. Number 3, size. Think about this. Every time you open your eyes, you focus on 4 things: moving objects, signaling colors like red, orange, and yellow, contrast rich objects, and big objects. Here is an example. You're at home with a friend in your living room. The TV is on, but it's muted. Will you look at it? Probably because of the moving objects, colors, and objects that draw your attention. Or for another example is if you are sitting someplace with a window and you see something moving outside, that's going to draw your attention away from whatever you're working on. So size is important. Let's look at this next one. Right here, what is the first thing that your eyes are drawn to? Most likely supercar exterior, that title. So if I want you to be drawn to that in my presentation, I would make that the biggest. Whereas in this one, your eyes are first drawn to the white text, flat free tires, xenon lights, versus the title, because that's the bigger size. So you can control where people focus. Also, this doesn't have a visual. Is it more boring than the other slide? I think so. I think the most important part of the slide should be the biggest and therefore have a big visual that will represent the message. That way that people that are looking at your presentation can remember that visual because it's the biggest and it's the first thing they see. For example, there you go. Now I have a big supercar. You can see the exterior of it, but I also have the other important information that I want people to know in my presentation. Will I be reading off the slide directly? No, because each one of these words, I'm going to give a little bit more information to go with it. So I will not be presenting directly off of the slide, but they will have the words that are up there in case they need a reminder of how to spell it or what exactly I'm talking about. Number 4 is contrast. Contrast also draws focus. For example, in this one, where do you find your focus? It's kind of hard, right? Because there's stuff going on. There's the smaller and the bigger, and there's a lot of words. So you don't really know where you want it doesn't really show where you want the person watching the presentation to look. Whereas in this one, the image immediately draws my attention. And then as I'm talking, I have animations that pop up the words that I'm presenting. So each one of these words will be presented on a click when I want to talk about that specific word. Now I can draw the focus with the contrast. Also, notice that there's a box behind the words. That's important too because it makes those words really stand out against that picture. So the transitions will help the people who are watching your presentation focus on where you want them to focus. Keep in mind that your background can often be distracting. If you have a white background with light letters, that can be a little bit more distracting than, say, something dark. This is not as distracting. You as the presenter will show up better with a black screen or a darker screen than you would with this white one. This white one is just too distracting. And remember, the presentation is about you. You're the one presenting. So you want to be the forefront of it, whereas your presentation part is just the tool to present. And number 5 is objects. How many objects should we have on the screen? This is a lot going on, especially if you have 95 slides that look like this, right? There's a lot of objects. Where are we going to have our focus? So let's do a little test. On the next slide, I want you to count the circles on the screen and nod when you have them counted. Okay, here we go. Remember, nod when you have them counted. That took about 2 to 3 seconds to count those blue circles. Now do it here. Good job. That took about 1.2 seconds. Now try this one. Very good. That took 0.2 seconds. That's around a 500% difference. Wow. But there are only 2 objects less. The 7 you have to count. The 5, you can see it as 5 easier. So counting takes more effort than just seeing. Keep in mind that the magical number of objects is 6 or less. If you have more than that, your audience has to use more brain power, and then they can't focus on what you are presenting. So this has 10 objects, and there's nothing visual. Can we agree that that's too many? What does it look like when we reduce it? That's better, right? That shows me where to focus. It helps the brain so there's not so many things going on. And then if we add an image and transitions, your presentation just got way better. Also keep in mind, because I don't have big paragraphs of text on the screen, I won't be reading off of the screen. I will be memorizing my presentation, or you could have it on note cards out in front of you as you're presenting. Will you need more slides? Maybe, but depending on how you make your presentation, you may not need more slides. You do need less objects on the slide though, and more presentation in your speaking. Don't jam all the information on the slides. Present it. So let's compare to how we started off. This is how we started off, and this is where we're at now. Lots more engagement will happen with a presentation like this. Now remember, in the speaking part, I can cover all the details I want. This slide, though, is simpler and more engaging. For example, I might say the flat free tires allow for a more comfortable ride. The xenon lights not only look great, but you can see the road way better. The high performance air intake and aerodynamic innovation allow for more speed. And who doesn't want that? Right? So I'm presenting with the details with my words, but the words that I want them to remember are still on the screen. So if you have specific vocab words that are needed, they're still right there. So let's do a little quiz. How many messages are you supposed to have per slide? Very good, one message. What two things can we use to steer focus? You got that right, contrast and size. What should we avoid putting on the slide if we are speaking at the same time? Sentences. Don't put sentences on the screen if you're going to speak at the same time. What kind of background should we use? Dark backgrounds are better. And how many objects per slide? Good job. 6 objects per slide. All right, you are ready. Almost. I've got one more thing to share with you. I forgot about this. Copyright free photos. Here's 2 really great websites to get those copyright free photos. And here are the credits. This was patterned after my source, How to Avoid Death by PowerPoint, a TED Talk by Mr. Phillips. Really, really great watch if you'd like to watch the whole thing. I kind of summed it up here in this presentation for you. So now you're ready. Go make your presentations, have a great time doing it, and make sure that you are engaging your audience.